Hello. Today I gave myself a pretty crazy challenge. I'll try to make a painting in just 5 minutes and do it 11 times in a row. Yes, I know it sounds ambitious, but that's the beauty of art. You never really know what will come out. Maybe I'll end up with gallery-worthy pieces, or maybe just a kindergarten exhibition from this video. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be entertaining. And the purpose of this video isn't just speed painting. It's also about exploring this question. How creative can I be under the pressure of time? Alright, starting with the first painting. 5 minutes sounds long at first, but the moment your brush touches the canvas, it feels like time flies. And that reminds me, isn't life like that too? Before we start, we think we have plenty of time. But once we actually begin, it rushes past us. So in this first painting, my goal isn't perfection. My goal is to get whatever's in my head onto the canvas before the timer stops. And honestly, that's an amazing exercise. It silences that little critical voice in your head. There's no time to overthink. You're just creating. And the funny thing is, sometimes your best work comes out in the moments when you think the least. Now, on to the second painting, and I've already realized, 5 minutes is nothing. You start painting an eye, and boom, the timer's up. But that's not necessarily bad. It forces you to make quick decisions. And here's a little secret. The hardest part of art is not the drawing. It's making decisions. Should I add shadow here? Should this color be brighter? Normally, you could sit and debate with yourself forever. But with only 5 minutes, you have no choice but to trust your instincts. And honestly, instincts are often smarter than we are. Of course, sometimes things go sideways. A crooked eye? No problem. It's modern art. Colors blending in the wrong way? Great. Abstract expressionism? To be fair, a lot of art movements in history probably started as happy accidents. One thing this challenge has taught me: time limits don't kill creativity, they sharpen it. Think about it. When your brain faces a problem, it always searches for the easiest path first. But when time is short, the easy path doesn't work. You're forced to experiment, and that pressure pushes you into creativity. Life works the same way. When you're stuck in a tough situation, you're forced to invent new solutions. Art trains you for that. It's not just about painting on a canvas, it's about shaping the way you think. In painting, being detail-oriented often looks like a strength. A painter carefully rendering a single strand of hair, a tiny fragment of shadow, or the reflection in an eye. From the outside, it inspires admiration. But those who live inside the process know being obsessed with details comes at a cost. The first disadvantage is time. Spending weeks, months, even years on a single piece. It might sound valuable, but most of the time it blocks the natural flow of creation. The more you focus on details, the harder it becomes to move forward. You get stuck on one spot, unable to continue until that little piece feels perfect. And in the meantime, you lose sight of the bigger picture. The second disadvantage is losing freedom. Detail-oriented work often invites perfectionism. This color isn't quite right. That line is off by a millimeter. This shadow doesn't match what I imagined. The more those voices grow, the more the artist stops creating and starts correcting. And corrections never end. At that point, painting turns from art into obsession. The third disadvantage is that spontaneity dies. When you drown in details, you start losing the soul of the work. You lose the energy of the moment, the boldness of the brushstroke, the freedom of the line. Because your mind is busy calculating, how can I refine this further? But the magic of art doesn't usually live in those calculations. It lives in daring, instinctive touches. Another issue is the loss of emotion. Yes, detail can make a painting technically flawless. But flawless without feeling rarely touches the heart of the viewer. What makes a painting memorable is not always the detail. It's the atmosphere, the emotional presence of the whole. That's why sometimes a rough sketch done in minutes speaks louder to people than a meticulously polished painting that took months. There's also the danger of exhausting the artist, constantly searching for flaws, constantly making corrections. This slowly drains you from the inside. Painting turns from joy into anxiety. And eventually, the artist risks losing their creativity under the weight of endless details. So is detail always bad? Of course not. Detail, when used in the right place and in the right amount, adds value. But too much of it becomes a chain around the artist's neck. When painting, the question should be, what does this detail add to the whole picture? If the answer is nothing, then that detail is just a trap. The real secret in art is balance, because art is not made of only details nor only loose strokes. It lives in the space where the two meet, where precision meets freedom. But when the artist gets lost inside details, both they and the work grow heavy. That's why sometimes you have to let the brush go free. A slightly crooked line, a color that's too dark, a shadow that doesn't fully settle. These don't destroy a painting. On the contrary, they breathe life into it. Because isn't life the same way? Small flaws, small imperfections, but a great sense of aliveness. In the end, being detail-oriented may impress, but it can also be like a shadow that chains the artist down. The essence of art is not in turning detail into obsession, but in knowing when to let it go. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is not chasing perfection, but accepting imperfection. And in that very moment, art finally comes alive. Now I'm on the fourth and fifth paintings, and I've noticed something. Each drawing is like a mirror. These 5-minute sketches show me my impatient side. I rush a lot. But they also reveal my daring side, the side that takes risks. I recommend you try this too. Set a 5-minute timer, grab a pen and paper, and just draw. Even if it's just a stick figure, that's fine. The goal isn't to make a masterpiece, it's simply to create. Remember, creating something is always better than creating nothing. By the sixth painting, my hand feels like it's on autopilot. It's almost like the brush is moving itself without me thinking, and that's actually a beautiful moment. Your mind steps aside and your hand just does what it knows. Of course, sometimes that autopilot makes mistakes. See this one? It was supposed to be a human face, but now it looks more like an alien. But who cares? Maybe it's my imagination playing a little prank on me. And honestly, that's the joy of art. Sometimes what you create is completely different from what you planned, but it's still valuable. Speaking of mistakes, in art, there's really no such thing as a mistake. Every brush stroke, every wrong line leads you somewhere. Sometimes the result pleases you, sometimes it doesn't. But both are lessons. Even in these 5-minute drawings, every so-called mistake becomes a style. A crooked eye gives the character more personality. Colors spilling outside the lines make the painting more dynamic. What we call mistakes are really just surprises from the creative process. By the 8th painting, I'll be honest, I'm getting a little tired. But that tiredness makes me think, art is really like running a marathon. You start with energy, then fatigue hits, but you keep going anyway. And in that moment, patience becomes the key. That's true in life too. Every new project starts exciting. Then the excitement fades, you get bored, you get tired. But the people who succeed are the ones who keep going even after the excitement is gone. Art has always taught me that lesson. Even when the brush feels heavy, you move to the next canvas. And this 11-painting marathon is teaching me the same thing all over again. Now here I am at the last two paintings. And honestly, some of these turned out good enough to hang on a wall. Others, well, they'll just live inside this video. But both kinds are valuable, because every single painting taught me something new. Sometimes it's about working fast. Sometimes it's about embracing mistakes. Sometimes it's just about daring to try. And above all, it's about producing. I hope you take away this message. Don't chase perfection. Chase creation. Art isn't only about the final result. It's also about the process. And sometimes, even in just 5 minutes, you can discover a lot about yourself. So if you enjoyed this, try it yourself. Do your own 5-minute drawings and share them. I'd love to see what you come up with. And remember, creativity isn't a talent, it's a habit. The more you create, the more it grows. Now I think I've earned a little break. My hand is kind of numb after all these paintings. But honestly, these 11 little experiments will inspire me for days to come. Which drawings did you like and which ones did you find awful? Please write in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.